So I often say that what guides me in life is the questions, where is the joy and where is the love? That 90% of the UK workforce is not engaged with their work. It's actually costing your business money because people are off sick. It's costing your business money because people are turning up, but they're not doing their best.
17 colleagues may be struggling with some form of mental health, and that's around 20%. 428 days will be lost per year due to work-related stress, depression, and anxiety.
When you look at the meaning of passion, there is the suffering side to it.
True.
When you are willing to suffer for the thing that you care about, that is real passion. About a third of the UK workforce is actually on the verge of burnout. People suffering with depression symptoms, stress, and anxiety, it's averaging around 1 in 6 people.
This is a legal requirement, but employees are not always aware that this is a legal requirement.
We can all benefit from counselling. You don't have to be in that place of crisis and struggle.
I hope she's listening. I hope they're all listening, because you're absolutely right. Hi, I'm Chinwe. In this podcast, I am thrilled to bring you an incredible lineup of guests, ordinary women who have harnessed their struggles into powerful transformations. No matter your background or backstory, their experiences will resonate with you and will inspire you to let go of the limiting narratives shaped by your circumstance, upbringing, or past programming. We can all achieve greater freedom and happiness in our everyday lives, and my guests are here to tell you how. So, come on, let's dive into season 2 of Beyond 9 to 5. Hi, welcome to Beyond 9 to 5. My guest today is a woman who is helping bring mental health support and well-being into the workplace so that businesses can sustain their most valuable asset, their people. I can't wait for her to tell us all about Thrivall and her journey as a founder, as a female founder. Together, we'll uncover how she keeps her passion burning and how she keeps that inner fire alive despite the obvious challenges that most founders go through. So let's jump right in because we're bound to be inspired today, and let's welcome Anwen Cooper.
Thank you.
Applause, yes, we should have So lovely to see you, Anwen.
And you.
Did you get here okay?
I did. Thank you for inviting me.
Excellent. I was going to jump right in and ask you to tell me a little bit about yourself and your founder journey. Just how did you end up with Thrivall? And then as you do that, you can tell us a little bit about what Thrivall does, because I think it's amazing. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So Thrivall is just over 2 years old now, officially. We incorporated back in March 2022. But the idea came out in the summer of 2021. So we had about 6 months of talking about this idea.
Yeah. You say we.
Yes. So I have a co-founder,
right, okay.
Dan Corp, and he was really the catalyst and the origin of the idea. Yeah. So during the lockdown period, he did the 1-year counselling skills diploma foundation course, which is a training that you do if you would like to become a professional counsellor. It's the sort of starting point for that journey. His intention was not to have a career change and to go down that path, but really just to find out more about counselling and learn some of those skills. And from that course, he learned about something called proactive counselling. So generally when we talk about counselling, we think about people who are in crisis, perhaps suffering with mental ill health, going through a difficult life situation and needing some extra support. So the way that we normally think about counselling is really as a crisis intervention or an ill health
where
treatment.
Something's happened and there's, someone's, hit the wall and you're coming in to rescue.
Yes.
Right.
So it's often kind of a last resort.
Yes, a reactive thing.
Yeah. But from his course, he learned about this concept of proactive counselling, which, as the name suggests, is counselling that you have proactively. So it's much more of a preventative approach. And it's basically from this idea that we can all benefit from counselling. You don't have to be in that place of crisis and struggle or ill health. So even if you're in a good place and you're actually feeling well, you can always be better. You can always feel more resourced, more supported. And we can always be developing ourselves and our relationships. And we all have stresses and strains in our lives day to day, small things that happen that we could benefit from talking through with another person and processing and just getting another perspective. So that's where the idea started. And we incorporated the company. We took an office in the Mason Innovation Centre, which is how we met.
So lovely, yes.
And we quite quickly met a company who have since become our first client. And we're really proud that they're now going into their third year of the programme with us. So that's, very quick kind of history of how the business started.
So what does the programme entail?
So it comprises 3 parts. The first part is what we call benchmarking, which is data collection, basically. So we gather information from the company that we're working for throughout the program. And that's basically an email survey that gets sent to all the program participants at the beginning of the program as part of their onboarding process. And we're asking them some simple questions about their personal well-being, how they feel, and a lot of that is linked into their job and how engaged they are with their work. So it's a combination of questions that are about their own personal well-being and their engagement with work and how productive they feel, how supported they feel, how aligned they feel with the work that they're doing and the company that they're a part of. The second part of the program is what we call group training workshops. So that's when we bring all of the team who are on the program together. We bring in experts on different aspects of well-being to deliver training sessions. And that's a combination of giving them tools and techniques, useful strategies and resources to help them develop their own well-being. And it's also about facilitating conversations within the team so that they can support each other better and develop a better team environment. And then the final part of the program, the third part, is what we call one-to-one check-in sessions or personal check-in sessions. And that is the part that came from the proactive counselling and person-centered counselling approach. So everybody who's on the program gets matched with somebody that they choose who is a fully qualified counsellor and also a coach. And that person also has experience from working in an organisation or in a business. So it might be that they've had a corporate career and then they've trained later in life to become a counsellor. Or perhaps they're self-employed as a counsellor practicing. They understand the pressures of business. They understand what it's like to be in a team.
Relatability is there, isn't it?
So they've
That's
got all
amazing.
of that to draw on. So they obviously bring empathy to those conversations. But they are fully qualified to deal with any trauma, any sort of deep underlying psychological issues that somebody might be presenting with. And they can also coach the person and give them support to move forward in a positive way. So they're quite multi-talented people. So the program is very holistic. It's looking at all different aspects of well-being and it's working on these 3 levels. So the individual support, the group or team level, and then also with the data collection and all of the data that we get from the surveys, which is collected anonymously, we report that to the leaders. So that's going up to the top of the organisation and saying, right, this is how your people are doing.
This is how they're feeling more, even more so.
And then there's some stuff that will come out of that might suggest ways in which the organisation could be changed in a more structural way. So people's jobs might change, the organisational structure might change to support people to feel better supported.
I think we spend, a good chunk of our time at work, isn't it? And we tend to take it for granted that actually that is a space where we need to think carefully about thriving. Therefore, Thrivall. Is that where the name comes from? Thriving.
The name is Everyone Thriving.
Everyone Thriving.
Everyone Thriving is what we. So what is our purpose?
Because I was just saying that we spend a lot of our time in the workplace, and I think it's only due diligence that an organization or an employer should think about the well-being of its staff and not wait till somebody crashes and burns. Or it should be preventative, isn't it? And so that people are comfortable at work. Do you think, because I think around COVID, right, there was a lot of talk about mental health at home, at work. Is the trend still there? I feel like there might have been like a bit of a loss of traction there around the conversations around mental health.
Yes, it's interesting. I agree. I think during COVID, because people were under so much stress and strain, there was definitely an increased awareness of mental health. I think that was building before COVID. We've had a number of reports and sort of political movements, and also with charities like Mind in the mental health space, who've done a lot of work over the last 10 years to really reduce stigma and raise awareness about mental health and make it more acceptable for us to be talking about these things. And there's also been an increased workplace awareness in particular. So I think that was kind of building before COVID, and then it really kind of reached a peak during the lockdown periods because of increased need. And I think you're right. I think since COVID, and people kind of going back into the workplace and back into their more normal routines, perhaps people have shifted their awareness away from it a little. However, something that we are aware of is actually the number of people struggling and suffering with mental ill health continues to be really high, and perhaps higher even than during the COVID lockdown period. There was a report that came out last year, beginning of 2024 now, because obviously we're in 25, called the BURNOUT Report by Mental Health UK, which is a big charity in the mental health space. And they identified that about a third of the UK workforce is actually on the verge of burnout and experiencing symptoms.
That is significant.
Yeah, so
that's
there is a lot
of
of people struggling. And if you look at people suffering with depression symptoms, stress and anxiety, depending on which data you look at, it's averaging around 1 in 6 people. So there's still a big problem.
That is a huge problem.
So whether people are aware of that, whether there's people talking about it, I don't know. But that's part of our mission, is to keep that conversation going.
Do you think that there is a generational difference between expectations? So, for instance, if you were in your 40s, for instance, your expectation of what your employer should do for you could be different from if a Gen Z is coming into the workplace, right?
Yeah.
Is there a difference there?
Yeah, for sure. I think so. And I think, I don't know how old you are, but I'm born in 1981.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of on the cusp of Generation X and Millennial.
Yeah.
I'm the last year, in fact, I think, of Generation X and the first year of Millennial. So depending on what you look at, I can be in either of those groups.
Yeah.
And I think there's a real sort of change in our generation. So the people who've come after us, the Generation Z, as you said, and now it's Generation Alpha, the ones leaving school and starting to come into the workforce. I think definitely there is more of an expectation that an employer is there to support you, to develop you, and there's more awareness from that age around mental health and wanting opportunities to develop, to have training and all of
creativity
that,
and not burn out.
For sure,
they're a bit more demanding, I think, the Gen Zs, but I think in a good way. I do hear some, colleagues in a way complain about, they're just so fussy, they're a bit, but I think I'm just thinking they're not fussy enough. I think because I think they have set the bar to some extent, and businesses coming up now need to be aware of that, isn't it? And be prepared that at some point it's not going to be an option for as a employer. To provide some level of support,
absolutely,
for your staff, isn't it? And I love that there is that conversation. And I love that Thrivall is doing quite a lot of work around that. When it comes to women in the workplace, right, especially when we are leading in the workplace, do you think there is a role for compassion and empathy in the workplace? And I say this because sometimes I think that we feel that if we are empathetic and soft, it takes away the power, basically, that we may look, like when we don't have enough power in the workplace. Is there a way to be both powerful in the workplace and lead with empathy?
100%. And I think it's not even an option. I think it's an absolute must that you have to be empathetic to be able to lead well. And I don't think it's necessarily something that only women can do. I think people maybe think of it as a feminine trait, but I think it's just a human thing. It's part of the human condition. We are pack animals. We are biologically designed to look out for each other, and there's strength in numbers and safety in numbers, and we are relational beings. We need to be supported by other people.
And connected,
and I think empathy can be mistaken, as you say, for softness, weakness. But really it is a strength, because something I've learned on my journey with Thrivall from my co-founder, Dan, having done that course in counselling skills. In person-centred counselling, there are these things called the core conditions, which you have to embody as a counsellor in your practice. And one of them is empathy. And from that, we have this skill of active listening. So when you listen actively, you're not listening for the other person to stop talking and wait for your turn to speak to get your point across. It's about actually really understanding what they're saying and understanding how they're feeling on a deep level to be able to respond appropriately. And I think as leaders, that's just absolutely key to getting people on board with your mission as an organization to be successful, to get people to back the purpose, to get people to turn up and do their best work. They have to feel valued. They have to feel listened to. And therefore, you have to have compassion for them to harness their full potential. I think it's just, not an option for me.
Yeah. I mean, but the struggle remains, isn't it, in terms of how the perception in the workplace when it comes to gender presence and expectations in the workplace. Because a lot of women still feel that if they are soft, so to speak, they lose power, they get disregarded. And there is still that worry for a lot of women. I certainly have spoken to quite a few women who would say, like, I just can't be soft. I can't, I have to be firm. I have to be this and that.
Yeah, I completely hear where they're coming from, and I understand that. But I think for me, I've just been on a massive journey over the last 2 years, learning so much more about this. And I think the more you learn about it, the easier it is to reframe it. Yeah. And to see it from a more positive perspective. I've done so much reading and I've got so much data now that I will share with you about how women are proven. So this is not opinion or like how people feel. It is like hard evidence and fact that women are proven to be better leaders in many situations. And feminine traits are proven to kind of harness people's potential and to galvanize people's efforts more effectively. So there's all of that side to it. There's also, I think when you understand what is empathy, actually, I think it brings a fresh perspective. So I think some people mistake empathy for sympathy. Sympathy can be quite disempowering. It's like, oh, poor you. Oh, I'm sorry that happened to you, or I'm sorry that you feel that way. And it can sort of demean somebody or kind of put them in a less
minimize their experience
position. Whereas empathy is just listening and understanding and being curious, actually, to understand. So there's nothing weak about that. It's actually empowering both for the listener and the person who's being listened to, because I'm getting more information, I'm understanding more, so that's putting me in a stronger position.
True.
But it's also elevating the other person because their experience is being validated.
I like what you said about empathy, because it sounds like it should be a proactive thing. There's that element of curiosity.
Right.
You are actually actively looking out for your team.
I'd just like to add one more thing, actually, when you said about the softness and the concern that people might have about being soft. Another thing that I learned recently from this book called, I can't remember what it's called now off the top of my head, but it's by Adam Grant. It's his latest book, Hidden Potential, that's what it's called. Adam Grant is a really interesting organizational psychologist. And he talks about how we have this concept that we talk about in the workplace of hard skills and soft skills.
Soft skills,
And it was really mind-opening for me. So he says that it came about because in the military, when they were training people, they had training around how to use weapons and machinery that is made of metal, usually, and they are hard things. So they had the hard skills training around how to use that stuff. And then they realize actually they also have to do training on how to manage people and lead people. And they started to call that soft skills training. Okay, so that's where it comes from.
That's where it came from, yeah.
And
Didn't
actually,
know that.
yeah, me neither. But when I learned it, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And then they have actually moved away from calling it that and using those terms, because in our society, because we have this perception of soft is weakness and hard is strong, and that's a good thing, we've come to feel that soft skills training is not as important or not as useful or whatever. So I think in times of challenge, and we have seen this in business, when people are under pressure with their budgets and they can only spend a certain amount of money on training, they're more likely to prioritize the hard skills training.
Yes,
how do I use this computer? How do I use this AI software? You know, how do we use the machinery that we've invested in? And they deprioritize spending on the people development.
Yes. Yeah.
That's such a mistake.
Yeah, it's a huge mistake, isn't it? Because I was looking at your Thrivall's profile on LinkedIn, and there's an interesting piece of statistics there where you said, well, not you, because that's basically data.
Yeah, we do like sharing statistics.
Yes, I know. So it says here, based on a typical organization of 100 employees, 17 colleagues may be struggling with some form of mental health, and that's around 20%. And those are the ones that are already struggling. We're not talking about, so that's quite a lot. 428 days will be lost per year due to work-related stress, depression, and anxiety. That's a year and a half worth of work. And £129,403 will be the annual cost of ill mental health in the workplace.
Yeah, and that's just based on an average salary. And obviously some people pay their people more than that. So it could be a higher cost for some businesses.
It could be a higher cost, yeah.
But it just gives you an idea.
If you were in a leadership role in a business, especially if it's a small to medium-sized business, you should know this, isn't it? Like, is there...
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realise.
They don't realise
because people, when they phone in sick, they don't necessarily say the true reason why.
True.
So people may not be able to attribute the absence directly to mental ill health. Yeah. So people might phone in and say, I've got a bad back, or I've got an upset stomach, or I've got a headache, or one of these kind of more physical ailments. So yeah, people don't always know the true cost. Yeah. The other thing that we try and make people aware of is not just the absence issue, which obviously has a real cost that's quite clear to see, even if you don't see it because of that reason. There's also something called presenteeism.
Yeah.
Where people turn up to work, they are physically present, or they may be working from home, but they're not mentally present. They're not fully engaged with their work. Yeah. There's actually an organisation called Gallup that does these big global surveys of the working population. And they have seen from the data they've collected that 90% of the UK workforce is not engaged with their work, which is 90%. Ridiculous, isn't it?
That is ridiculous.
Yeah, I know. So there's this huge problem where people are not fully giving their all to their work. They're just turning up and doing the bare minimum a lot of the time.
90%, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's shocking. And then there's other reports that we've read, depending on which source you look at. It puts the price of this presenteeism issue at between double the cost of the absence, which is the one that you just read out, double and up to 10 times as much. Yeah, so the actual cost of business is a lot of money, again, lost. So that's what we're trying to get across, is that this is not just a touchy-feely, we kind of care about everyone's feelings problem. It's actually costing your business money because people are off sick. Yeah. It's costing your business money because people are turning up, but they're not doing their best.
Which is probably worse, actually.
Yeah. And sometimes those people are kind of a detractor from the business. That's because they're maybe upsetting people. Yeah. They're maybe difficult to work with. And there's all those associated issues. Yeah. Another thing that we're trying to make people aware of is that they have a duty of care in terms of legal obligation as an employer. I was just
going to ask about that. Yeah. So where is the duty of care?
Yeah. And I think a lot of small businesses don't realise that in the health and safety legislation in the UK, there's actually a whole piece around stress in the workplace, and that you do actually have a legal obligation to not create a stressful working environment. I think a lot of people still think health and safety is to do with physical environments.
Things, don't slip and fall and things like that.
Exactly.
But no,
and obviously that's important.
Yeah.
But then there's a whole side to, you know, are you asking too much of people? Are you putting too much expectation and stress and strain on them, and you're not giving them enough support and enough resource? Have you created an atmosphere where people are afraid to speak up or say if they have a concern? You know, do you have a bullying environment? Is it a kind of toxic culture? And all of those things can contribute to poor mental health.
I mean, I think this is there is a lot of work to be done there, because it sounds like not only do business owners or employers, they're not always aware that this is a legal requirement. But employees are not always aware that this is a legal requirement, right? So because if you did, you will then hopefully be going into a new job role with your eyes open and be requesting. Can you request? And, you know, say, like, I'd rather, I don't feel comfortable here. There should be processes that allow people to...
Yeah, I agree. I think there are some forward-thinking organisations that have put things in place. We know a wonderful organisation that does a lot of stuff around sort of whistleblowing, essentially, and speaking up if people have concerns. So there are some people doing work in that space. And there's definitely, I think, the new generation that you spoke about earlier coming through, who perhaps are a bit more confident and open-minded and have a higher expectation. But I still think there's a huge sort of power differential between employers and employees. And I think a lot of people just feel grateful to have a job and a paycheck, and they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to speak up or ask for more.
Ladies, pause for a moment and imagine this. A circle of women, strong, talented, wise and powerful, all in one place, ready to support you through tough times and to celebrate the good ones too. Picture a safe space where you can truly be yourself. A sisterhood that lifts you up, empowers you, and where we can share invaluable experiences with each other. Now, what if I can tell you that that circle is right in your hands? Introducing Health Mary app. Health, well-being and lifestyle solutions for women by women. All you have to do is download the app. It's free and it's all the girl power you need. Co-founding a business must be challenging. Tell me about it. It is challenging. What has been the most challenging part of this for you? Has there been any instances or situations that you found really difficult? And I'm asking this because there will be young people and women, not just young people, you know, all of us listening, who will be quite curious about, you know, moving on, perhaps even from a standard employed role, and wondering, well, if I wanted to go off and start up my own business, what are the risks? What are the challenges? Am I going to come crashing down? Is the world going to flip upside down and something horrible happens? So for you, what has been your personal circumstance that you found quite challenging?
Yeah, sure. That's a really great question. I love it. So prior to Thrivall, I set up my own business about 10 years ago on my own. And my business partner similarly. And that's actually how we met, was through our separate consulting businesses.
Oh, I see.
And we got to know each other over the years by collaborating and referring work to each other and working on some projects together. So I know what it's like to be a solo founder, and I also know what it's like to be a co-founder. And I think there's pros and cons to both. I think we often say this, I think it's a South African proverb, which you might know, called, which says, to go fast, you go alone. To go far, you go together.
Yeah.
And we came to that through Simon Sinek's book, Together is Better. And I think it's really true. So I think when I started my own consulting business, I was like, right, I'm going to call it this. It's going to look like this. I'm going to offer this. I'm going to work with these people. And it was very clear to me, because it was very led by my personal passion and my interests and my skills and experience and all of that. So it was very easy for me to do that very quickly and to make decisions. I didn't have to consult anyone. I just did it. So it was kind of fast in some respects. And then with Thrivall, because I'm always kind of consulting and we're trying to reach a consensus or collaborate as much as possible on things, it does sometimes feel a bit slower. And sometimes there's differences of opinion to navigate. And that does feel like it sometimes slows us down. But I do know that in the long term, it makes us stronger. More resilient, because we've kind of stress tested the idea already and we've incorporated more thinking. So it's more robust in the long term. So I think, the pros of doing things on your own is that you have freedom, you have free reign, you have all that creative expression, opportunity and speed, perhaps, in some respects. But I think, working together with somebody else, whether that's just one person or more than one, it does make you stronger, both in yourself and as an organization. And also there's a lot of data that shows that businesses that have co-founders do outlast the solo founders. Yeah. And I think data before, when you're in a challenging time as well, I think having somebody else to bounce ideas off and to support you, it just means that you're more likely to weather that time.
Are there personality traits that you have, right? And I'm talking about you as a person now, right? That you find useful as a founder or as a business owner now. Are there any particular aspects of you? So I had a guest from season 1 whose personality trait that's working well for her now is her stubbornness.
Right.
Which she actually thought was a bit of a hindrance at some point. But actually that trait is in a way serving her well now. And I say it because sometimes we can sit and unpick ourselves, right? And we say, I don't like this about my attitude and I don't like this about myself and that. But the point I'm trying to bring out is that those traits are part of you, and that in a way there's a flip side to everything. So for you, do you have any traits that you find that actually is a good thing I'm stubborn? It's a good thing I'm what do you think?
I recognize that and resonate with that one. I often think our greatest strength is also our greatest weakness.
Yes.
So things that serve us well a lot of the time can also work to our detriment. But I'm definitely a very sort of driven, passionate person, and persistent. What other traits do I have that I think serve me well as an entrepreneur? That's an interesting one.
I think you're quite very sort of open and collaborative, isn't
definitely,
it?
That's true, yeah.
Right? Because I remember the first time we met and I came away thinking, oh, wow. You told me everything I needed to know about the MIC I just felt like this is a woman I was meeting you for the first time, and you'd left me feeling, quite empowered and give me loads of advice. It felt as if you could see, okay, I think you might need this, I think you might know, which was just so lovely. I have, been an entrepreneur now for a while now, and that's not common.
Right. Thank you. I think, but that, to my point, I think that is a strength. So thank you for recognizing that. I think I would call that generosity.
Yes.
That's my intention. Is I intend to be generosity.
Really generous with your.
But I do think sometimes that I feel that can play to my detriment is that I am quite giving of time and knowledge and connections. And sometimes I don't feel like that comes back to me. So I just do it with a spirit of, I don't expect anything to come back, but hopefully it's for the greater good.
Yeah. What tools, are there things that you do to help you through your entrepreneur? Because I know it's hard. There will be moments where you're thinking, what the... right? How do you lift yourself out from those situations? I know you've got a co-founder, right?
That definitely helps.
It does help, doesn't it? Yeah.
And I think just being part of networks and having other good people around you, like I'm really lucky to have a very supportive husband, a good relationship with my family, friends, but I'm part of lots of business networks as well. And I find that really useful, just getting other people's perspectives. I read a lot and I find that useful, just sort of reading other people's experiences.
Do you listen to podcasts?
I do.
Yeah.
Some.
It's a bit like a university of life, I call it, right? Because I think most people, I know some people who don't actually listen to podcasts.
Right.
And I'm thinking, girl, you should. Because literally by doing that, you are exposing yourself to other people's experiences, isn't it? And you kind of, and I love reading books as well.
Yeah.
So that is a really useful tool.
I do listen and I do watch videos on YouTube as well. And I love going to events. That's something I really love doing. I regularly will go to events, like almost every week sometimes, but at least once a month I'll go to an event, and I love listening to people standing up on stage and sharing their experience, or panel discussions. I find that interesting. But yeah, I actually have a little note on my phone now of things to remind me when times are difficult. And I think for me, and part of the reason I was really excited to come on the podcast, and I love what you're doing with the podcast.
Thank you.
Is that it's so much for me about passion and purpose.
Yes.
Which I think is where you come from. And I think in those difficult times, I just always remind myself of what is my purpose, what is my passion. And I have a third one actually, which is principles, which is just another word for values. And just reminding myself of what is important, what are the values that I want to live by. Principle, just because it's a word that begins with a P. But yeah, just being able to stick to my principles is really important.
Do you think we are born with a purpose, or do you think we make or create our purpose?
You're asking some great questions.
I know, right? Yeah, because I think it's an important one.
Yeah, that is interesting.
I'll tell you my, you can
what do you think?
So I think we create it. We have to make our purpose, right? Because I'd been on my own entrepreneurial journey, as you know, founding, creating Health Mary and all of that. And I kept thinking, well, what is my purpose? It just suddenly occurred to me, well, girl, you got to pick one, right? Because especially if you're a creative, for instance, right? And all of us, we have so many talents. There's so many things we can potentially do. So your skills, you can be a lawyer. Most people can do quite a few things. Yeah. But that can sometimes be confusing, isn't it? And I think eventually I was like, what is your purpose? What makes you tick? Now, my purpose around helping women stems from my own experiences. But I wasn't born with that, right? Those were experiences I had along the way. Yes. And in a way, because I picked it, I decided this is what it will be. Okay. It starts with feeling a certain way about certain things. Yes. But in a way, ultimately, I think we have to go around in circles, but then come back and choose it. Yeah, that's really interesting. What do you think? I feel like maybe that's really helpful because it's helped me think what my answer is. But I feel like there's maybe another, this is a bit of a tangent really, but there's another question that maybe sort of sits alongside that, maybe not for today. But I think it is making me think, like, do you believe in fate and destiny? And is that sort of predetermined? Do you? I don't know, but I think that question of do you come into the world with a purpose, I think that kind of presupposes that maybe you do have a predetermined destiny. Yeah. But if you don't believe that, then you feel maybe you're on a journey to find that, or maybe that is your destiny to find that out as you go along. But I think, my reflection on the question and hearing your view is that I really like this quote. I can't remember who said it. I think it was Steve Jobs, that life only makes sense backwards, and like you join the dots by looking back. That's right. Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know who said it, but that just made absolute sense there for me now. And there's another quote that says, there's no such thing as luck. Luck is preparedness meeting opportunity. Yeah. And I think for me, purpose kind of links to both of those things. So I don't think we necessarily come into the world with a birthright for a purpose set for us. I think things do happen through our lives. Whether they were meant to happen, I don't know. And then how we respond to them is about we find meaning in those things. Yeah. And I think that's part of the human condition, is that we are wired to find meaning in things. And that is our purpose, is how we respond to the things that happen to us and draw something useful from that we can take forward. Yeah. Do you have kids? The future. I have a daughter. Do you have a daughter? So if you are a mother, that's a purpose already there. Your purpose literally is to be a mom to this person. Now, you couldn't have been 12 years old and thinking my purpose is to be a mum?
Well, I think I did have a bit of that.
Did
growing
you?
up, I did always think I would be.
But what if you didn't? What if you didn't eventually become a mum, right? So the purpose, in a way, became a purpose only after the experience has happened.
I would challenge that, because I think, definitely there are people who would like to become mothers and they can't.
Yes,
or it doesn't happen for them, and I think that I would like to think, whether they would agree with me, I don't know. It's probably different for different people, but I think I would hope that a lot of those people could find another way to express that motherly quality, perhaps not by giving birth to a child, but, in other ways. And so I think your purpose is deeper than the role that you play. Yeah. So I don't think your purpose is necessarily to be a mother or to be an entrepreneur or a business owner. I think your purpose is something deeper, and then it can be expressed through different roles.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think you're right. Thank you for that.
So the purpose is much more of a general mission that you're on. Yeah. And you can take different roles in relation to that mission.
And to be mindful, yes, you're absolutely, you've just nailed it, I think, right? The role and the purpose are not the same thing.
Right.
And
they're obviously related.
They are related, yes. And
separate.
you can achieve a purpose. The role is a vehicle through which you could achieve a purpose,
That's
isn't
right.
it? We're doing well here, isn't it? So, but be careful, I would say, where you confuse both, isn't it? Because a lot of people think that, say, I'm a lawyer, therefore my role is to be, my purpose is to be a to do law. Maybe your purpose really is to listen to people, something different, but you're just channeling that purpose.
I think that's such a key insight, because I think that is a source of pain for lots of people.
Yes.
Getting attached to their role. And then if that role can't continue for whatever reason, I think that's very difficult for people because then it's so linked to your identity as a person.
Yeah.
I think it can be painful for people to have to change their role or to let go of a role.
True.
Or to have an aspiration for a role that they can't step into for whatever reason.
And it causes them pain because they can't get into a role. But actually, if you think about it, that role is probably not your purpose. And if you look at it from that angle, then I think just life gets generally easier because then, it's not the end of the world if you didn't get that job.
I think it's more expansive and opening you up to more opportunities, where as a role-based kind of way of looking at things can close things down and confine you.
Yeah. Sometimes we have more than one purpose, isn't it? You might, what's yours? Can you give me, give me one?
Oh, goodness.
What do you think?
So I often say that what guides me in life is the questions, where is the joy and where is the love?
Okay, yeah.
And so I'm just looking to create more joy and to enjoy life and to have opportunities to love and be loved.
Yes.
And I think that is my purpose, is to help other people have that as well. Create that for myself. And so I guess that's part of what attracts me to the Thrivall mission, is that it's about creating work and lives where people feel like they are thriving and they can experience joy and love.
Yeah.
And
because work should be joyful.
Exactly.
Really, I think that it's such a difficult thing when you are working every day and you're putting something out there in the world, but you're not joyful doing it. I think that's really, and unfortunately, it's quite common for a lot of people.
So I just want to add something to that, because I think sometimes people misunderstand what I'm saying, that you're going to come into the office and you're going to be like, la, 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 this is great. And like you're scrubbing the floor and cleaning up dirt off the floor and things like that. And no, like there are obviously tasks that you need to do in your work that are not fun or enjoyable in and of themselves. And not every day is going to be amazing fun. That's not what I mean. For me, the joy is not about being like happy, clappy all the time. It's really about feeling that you're making a difference, that there's meaning in your work, that it's purposeful, it's satisfying.
Feeling valued.
Exactly. As well. And for me, the joy and the love are really interconnected, because if you feel that you are caring for other people through your work, do you know Khalil Gibran, the poet? And he wrote The Prophet, which is a beautiful long poem. Yeah. He talks about work is love made visible.
Oh,
which I love.
Yes.
So for me, as long as you can express love through your work, which is caring for other people, and you feel cared for in some way in return, that for me is joy.
Yeah.
That is feeling like, okay, this is good. This makes me feel good. Even though if day to day it's not all fun, happy, clappy.
Introducing Health Mary app. Health, well-being and lifestyle solutions for women by women. Download the app. It's free and it's all the girl power you need. Joy is when you can dance in the storm, isn't it? So it's not necessarily about easy work.
Right.
It's sometimes about the hard work, but you can feel joyful doing hard work as well,
nice.
Isn't it? I think that's amazing. If my 18-year-old daughter was here and she asked you, I want to be a founder. I want to, at some point, because she's in first year of university.
Yeah.
What sort of things should she be looking out for at the moment? What sort of, I was going to say soft skills.
People skills, we call them.
People
or human
skills. Human skills.
How can you be a better human?
Yes.
And develop your relationship with
Should
people.
she be developing? Well, I know you don't know her, but just generally, a young woman, who's looking to, at some point, become an entrepreneur or take on a founder role.
Yeah.
What would you say to her?
When I look back to myself at that time, the things that I did that I think were useful experiences for where I am now, I always had jobs, like from the age of 14 when I was legally allowed to have a job. Like at school, I did like weekend jobs, holiday jobs. When I was at uni, I did part-time work. And I think, the more work experience that you can get, the better. Yeah. So not working for yourself, but working for other companies of different sizes in different industries with different types of people, I think is really valuable because it opens your mind to what is a good job, what is a good company, what is a good boss.
Yes.
I think you kind of need to see that and have that experience. So definitely just do that. And then other things that are not paid employment, where you can exercise leadership skills. So when I was at uni, I joined the theatre group because I liked performing. And through that, I ended up directing shows. And obviously that's sort of like a leadership role where you're kind of auditioning people, deciding who to put in what role,
using your voice in the process as well.
Exactly. And there's a whole kind of team of people that you're working with to make that happen. So I think that was a really useful experience. I joined the committee of that society to help kind of move that forward. So I think all of those experiences were really useful.
I mean, that's interesting. Joining the committee there just puts you in a position to start learning how to make sort of high level decisions and all of that. I hope she's listening. I hope they're all listening. Yeah, because you're absolutely right. It's those experiences that you start formulating. And I think the younger, the better. So from, early teens, starting early to start formulating those practices and experiences is so important.
And I think also just getting comfortable with being uncomfortable and putting yourself out of your comfort zone, trying new things that maybe feel a bit challenging. I think it's very easy for people to sort of take the safe route and stay in their comfort zone. And I think to be an entrepreneur and to start your own business, you have to be willing to be uncomfortable a lot of the time.
Yeah, I know.
So you got to get used to that.
Yes, the growing pains. It's called growing pains for a reason, but then there is growth. That's the thing about the growing pains, isn't it? It's not just, there is growth at the end of all of that.
Exactly.
Do you read? Of course, you read quite a bit.
Have
you read anything recently? Can you recommend something? So I'm a bit of a bookie, and I went through this period where I just didn't get the headspace or time to read. And then I decided I was going to break my non-reading streak. Last year, was it the year before? I think it was 2023, when I decided I was going to do one book a week for 10 weeks.
Oh, wow.
I
remember seeing you did that on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's right. And it was just a good way of like literally going head in back into reading. Have you read something recently that you can recommend?
So that Hidden Potential book that I mentioned by Adam Grant was really a good read. It opened my mind to lots of concepts relating to personal development, but in the workplace, professional development and how we learn. And I would say that's probably the most impactful book that I read last year. I think my big takeaway from that, and as a recovering kind of overachiever academic kind of student, he really reframed academic success for me. And he talked about how in the workplace, perhaps traditionally, and maybe still a lot now, we judge people based on their grades. And we go, okay, who's the A grade student? They're the best candidate. But actually, what we should be looking for is the candidate who's made the biggest improvement. So the person who's gone from a D to a B. And understanding how did they make that journey, that is more of an indicator of somebody who is going to be resilient, hardworking. It's more a measure of their character. And that's a better thing to look for.
Have you read this book called The Richest Man in Babylon?
I've heard of it.
Yeah,
I've not
it's a good one. I would recommend that one to you.
Thank you.
Every episode, I ask our guests to leave a quote, an affirmation in the evergreen book. Somebody should please suggest a name for this book. I feel a bit weird because I say evergreen book.
I think evergreen is good because it means that it will live on.
It will live on. It's thank you, Anwen.
A perennial source of wisdom.
We'll keep the. No, that's totally true.
So it works.
It works. Okay, I'll keep it then. I'll keep the name Evergreen Book. You've been baptized by Anwen today, then. But first, I'll read out the quote from the guest before you, and let's see whether that resonates. And then afterwards, you can write your one down for the next person coming. So let's have a look. It says here. Oh, okay. This is a good one, I think. Be an ordinary woman with extraordinary determination. Is that relatable?
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I like the idea of we're all ordinary, really. I do believe everyone is equal. So I don't like the idea of sort of exceptional people. Like, obviously, there are some people who are perceived to be exceptional because of what they've achieved in life. But I think, at the end of the day, we're all equal. But what maybe makes those people stand out as exceptional for their contribution is
the extraordinary streak.
Yes, the resolve that they have.
Yeah. Because sometimes it does take an extraordinary level of determination to get past certain phases of life, through difficulties and challenges. And I just wonder sometimes, how do you practice extraordinary determination? Like, it feels like one of those things that you never know whether you've got it until the time comes. Right. So you're in the situation, isn't it? But
I think it comes back to our earlier conversation about the purpose and the passion and the principles.
Yes.
And at those difficult times, you do question, or I do question, like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Like, I'm not enjoying it. It's not giving me the joy. I don't feel loved or cared for and all of that stuff. And it's like, oh, should I be doing this? And I think, when I dig deep and I kind of reconnect to my true passion. And also, that's something I want to say is, like, the meaning of passion is something I've really reflected on over the last year or two. I think passion has become a bit of an overused word, particularly in the business world and amongst entrepreneurs. Everyone's working on their passion.
I'm so passionate about everything. Yes.
But really, when you look at the meaning of passion, there is the suffering side to it.
True.
When you are willing to suffer for the thing that you care about, that is real passion. It's
True.
not all the sort of soft, fluffy stuff. So, I think just reminding yourself, what is it that you genuinely care about, and what would you be willing to suffer for? Because it has this higher purpose, because there is this deeper meaning. And I hosted a film the other day called Purpose, which is all about the well-being economy. It's a really great documentary that you can watch online if you search for purpose.film.
I'll put the link in the description of this podcast. Yes, I will do. Yeah.
So I hosted the UK premiere in London back in November, and I had a really amazing conversation afterwards with the filmmaker. I hosted a Q&A, and I said to him, look, you've taken many years to make this film, and it follows these two economists who've also had a very slow, frustrating journey in their careers with the work that they do. It's very difficult and challenging work. And I said, how do you keep going? Because it's
so
just,
long. Yeah,
so frustrating and takes so long. And he just said, we don't have any choice. Like, this is the work that we have to do. Like, we can't just walk away and say, oh, we're not going to bother. We're going to do something else. There is no other option. Like, we have to do this.
Yes.
So that's what I come back to. It's like
pushing through the suffering as well, isn't it? And just feeling like this is it. We have to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just amazing. In 1 hour, we have unpicked purpose, and I think that's really useful. This is such a great high level conversation I've had this afternoon.
Yeah, I love it.
Unpicking what purpose is.
Yeah.
I put
what is the meaning of life?
What is the meaning of life? That's another big question. But unpicking what purpose is and what passion is, so important. And I think that a lot of us will, in fact, live freer and happier lives if we understand those two things about ourselves.
Absolutely.
And understandably, it's a journey. We don't always wake up and all the answers are there. But for me, if you haven't found it, keep searching.
Yeah.
Keep searching.
It reminds me of another book, actually, by Viktor Frankl, a psychologist who was in the concentration camps in the Second World War. And he wrote Man's Search for Meaning. And he has a quote from that book, which is something like, man can endure anything if he has a big enough why.
Yeah.
And
that makes sense.
Yeah, I think when we have that sense of meaning, you really can suffer through
quite a
lot.
Yeah. And when, oh my goodness, this has been amazing. I told you guys, you'll be so inspired by this wonderful woman who is pushing through with her passion and purpose. I am going to leave the link for Thrivall in the description. If you're a small business owner, especially, you have a responsibility to care for your work, the people in your workplace. But I think it should come from a place of empathy. It should come not because there's a legal requirement from it for to do it. But it pays, and you get back folds, isn't it? When you really, truly invest in your people. So I will leave a link to Thrivall and a link to all of the book recommendations that Anwen has left for us today. Thank you so much for listening. For whatever you do, keep your purpose front and center, and that passion burning brightly behind it. You've got this, girl. Coming up next week on Beyond 95, is your gut health related in any way to your mental health?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Tell me why.
There is a link between certain bacteria present in the gut and depression and anxiety disorders. How we are taking care of our gut is affecting our quality of life. I look also at gluten intolerance and celiac disease, and I think all these intolerances are on the rise.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it's regarding our food industry and what type of food we're eating.
Where are the opportunities for traditional medicine and functional medicine to come together?
In plenty of cases, we do have an opportunity to do it holistically. There is a space, so I see functional medicine as a link between traditional and holistic approaches.
Where do I start? How do I make a self-assessment about where my health is?
Start with your energy levels. It's not about inches, about physical appearance, energy levels, your sleep, your period pain, or you should not have it. Healthy gut is about diversity. Different type of vegetables, different type of proteins. The more type of bacteria you can feed, the more benefits you will receive.